Here we have Bitcoin versus the dollar over here, and the rally and the recovery off of our current lows at about $40,000, just below $40,000 to be fair, is well underway for the short and medium term. And yes, I do expect that this rally will continue until this happens, to reference the good old title right there. Anyways, what I'm talking about is essentially the fractal relationship that we're seeing between this bottom over here in the more recent times on Bitcoin at the $40,000 or so level versus this bottom over here that we saw over the summer. Now, from a price action standpoint, obviously there are a lot of similarities. I'll just quickly draw them out right now if I can. There we go. That would be this one right here, and that would be this one right here to be or actually, let me do a little bit of a bigger circle right there, because this one is certainly very much unconfirmed just yet. And I want to match this up with all the confirming factors that you would expect to see if the fractal is going to be legitimate to begin with, because a lot of the time, the biggest issue that I see with people talking about fractals is they basically just copy and paste what they want to see on price action. And then it's like Bitcoin back to $100,000 because this happened, which looked somewhat remotely similar to this, when realistically, yes, price action can be fractal, or it is fractal in a lot of ways. I mean, you have the same sort of psychology going on within the market, but ultimately that needs to be verified with tangible things, which typically you do find not just on price action, but also on supporting indicators as well, which is what I hope to do today. So in this case right here, we do see this first spike down, actually exactly on this green vertical line, where you do get that first spike down, and that would be akin to this area right here. Then Bitcoin spends about a month or so rallying back up and creating a daily range. That would be this area right here versus this area right here at about $52,000. And then of course comes back down and tests around that prior low. In fact, even making an ever so slightly lower low here on a wick basis, but not closing specifically below that 4th of December low, or in this case, the initial dump dildo, which I think was about 20th of May, 18th or 20th of May, whatever the hell it is. And I'm talking about this one right here. What happens after that, if this is going to play out? We do expect a rally, and I do expect that this current rally does continue on as the short-term validation conditions were met over the past few days here. So we've been marching targets up, taking it one step at a time, which I do think is the most relevant and reasonable way to be taking a recovery like this, because if it is going to recover from here, it's very likely going to take some time. And of course, what happens after that? You actually pop back up in exactly to the 0.5 Fibonacci here. No, actually, apologies. I am wrong on that. It's not the 0.5. It is actually the 382, as you can see, finding the highs alongside this range. So I'd be looking for some sort of a relationship like that if we go over here to our more recent iteration of this. So I'm going to take the low of this. I'm going to take the low of this if I can actually do it properly. Make sure that this is done properly as well. There we go. And draw it to the high, and there we go. We do see that 382 is coming in right around 47,500, which you can imagine that green 55 exponential moving average on the daily right here is going to start to curl down around that region, likely within the next week to 2 weeks, I would imagine. So Bitcoin very likely does put in a rally somewhere around that region. Yes, there will be stops and goes along the way, maybe even another retest of the lows in the interim, as you did kind of see over here. But ultimately, as you did see in this iteration right here, price action did slink back on over and test exactly around on a closing basis. That prior wick low did not close lower again, and that was your bear trap, as confirmed, getting back above the 618 right here. That was the earliest area where it was reasonable to say, hey, we have a macro bear trap going on right now, and that's exactly when we got very bullish on this channel, looking for first targets up to 40,000, and then things just continued onwards and to the moon, to new all-time highs, obviously. So in this case right here, Bitcoin again going to have stop and goes along the way. I imagine the daily 21 and somewhere between the daily 21 and the daily 20 simple moving average, which is going to be a little bit higher. I think it's actually right around $46,000 right now, is kind of the area that I'd be looking towards. Anywhere around there is a little bit of a precarious place, as you might say. And then I'd be looking for a bit of a choppy market, something like this. And if you see Bitcoin hang back down and really test around the lows without actually breaking them, that's going to be where I start to become a lot more interested in this, actually putting in potentially a macro low within this region. I do think that is kind of best case scenario here. The reason why I think it's best case scenario is because while Bitcoin can obviously do whatever the fuck it wants, obviously, it's low probability that we do see a V bottom out of this region. If we were going to see a V bottom, we would have seen it from the 4th of December low no later than January. And in this case, obviously, retesting that low is not going to be indicative of that. But here's the thing. What would make me 100% backtrack on that statement and immediately get extremely bullish on Bitcoin? In this case, it has to be the exact same as it was before, and that would be back above your daily range highs, the same criteria that we've been been looking at for now over a month and a half at $52,000. As long as Bitcoin's below there, it's very difficult to be, super bullish on this asset, I would say, for the long term. Of course, short-term rallies, which can be, some big percentage moves, absolutely, definitely tradable, are great, but they don't necessarily fulfill that criteria. And in this case right here, what I'll also bring up is some indicators. So now I want to really match this up and create a narrative here. So first and foremost, I wouldn't say this is foremost, but this is just a big one for me right now, especially talking about the Jewel Light, is this read here, where we do see extreme reads at this level just below the critical zone on this indicator, which you can see we pretty much got exactly pretty much the exact read on, guess where, the 20th of fucking May, and that was Bitcoin's last major low right here. And to put that into even a greater proposition, we did see it first hit major extremes here on the all-time highs. Obviously, we saw the same thing over here. So a very fractal relationship in the way that rally has been bringing Bitcoin to new highs and then coming back down for those macro higher lows. So just something to be aware of. On top of that, if we go over here into, of course, sentiment indicators, I want to once again talk about, of course, the fear and greed index, which I'll just blow up right here. Hey, stop that. Let me grab this one right there. There we go. And again, from a sentiment standpoint, which you would expect, the psychology of a move like this to be more or less the same. I mean, people haven't fucking changed since we became anatomically modern Homo sapiens, which was like hundreds of thousands of years ago. If my memory serves me correctly, I'm not exactly 100% sure about that. My point is that it's fucking deep ingrained in your goddamn brain, and we ain't getting away from it unless you're like some sort of enlightened monk living over in Tibet or something, at which point you probably, or Taiwan. Oh shit, it's a country. And at that point, you probably don't care about Bitcoin to begin with. But you can see over here from this area that we've been working on, very similar to what we saw over the summer, where you spent about 2.5 months within the extreme fearful zone. And by the way, we're still within the extremely fearful zone at about a 22 read. Yeah, that probably did change a little bit from yesterday to today, but ultimately we do expect this, coming off this current low right here, to probably spend, maybe at least a couple more weeks, maybe even another full month or month and a half within that region. And it's really not until we see price action follow through that this becomes validated from this perspective. But of course, I always want to say, when we're looking at something like this, while it does give a well-rounded picture of what's going on, it is not in and of itself actionable. I really actually dislike sentiment indicators like this as a main driver. They have to be a secondary or tertiary thing in the way that I look at things, just to be 100% clear. I also want to show, of course, over here that the funny rates for Bitcoin are still very much negative, actually. In fact, they've been consistently negative over the last few days, I do believe, going back to when exactly was this started. Yeah, for the last couple of days, actually, since the 11th. And even before then, we were seeing, intermittent periods of negative rates. So these are not significantly negative rates, no, but it is negative 0.011%, and that is about the most negative that we've seen actually basically since back on over here. And you'll notice, if you're perceptive, that the summer we did see that initial spike down on that May dumpola, where we did see extremes on the funny rates, on the negative side. We saw the same thing over here on December 4th, by the way, as well. That's what that big spike represents, and then it kind of marched its way upwards and onwards over time as Bitcoin did prove itself. We're getting the same thing right here as well, and on that second dumpola right here, where it retested that lows, you did get that next spike down. I think that's what we're experiencing right here. So as long as those funny rates are negative, that does suggest that the more recent shorts are being more aggressive on price action, and those ones are at the mercy of the market, obviously. The greater shorts, I imagine that they're, well in profit, and whilst they probably are going to consider taking profit coming off of a major region like this, we still want to see the greater global open interest come down a little bit more. At least I think so. I think that would be relevant to be looking for right here. Yes, we are actually seeing a regain about $500 million with a B from a couple of days ago, or actually about the 10th of January to where we're at right now. So ultimately, I do think that this next move is probably not going to be the one that you're looking for. I do think that it continues a little bit higher, which we're going to talk about targets here once again once we get to the shorter term timeframes. But for right now, I think that this is once again a bit of a cautionary signal saying, hey, Bitcoin probably is resetting, and things could very well work out within that way, but we're not there just yet. At least from a more statistically relevant historical perspective, no, we typically expect to see this come and correct down, at minimum to like 11 billion after hitting extremes like this, of which we have seen 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5 times within the last year, and there was actually another 6 iteration that was literally in January of last year as well, with the exact same interpretation of it. But basically, anytime it's gotten above 13 billion, we've corrected down. Price action has corrected at minimum 20%, and in some cases all the way up to like 50 to 60% over time. So I won't go through the whole rigmarole on that one again, because I think that I'm just boring the shit out of people with it right now. but you can definitely check that out on your own time. Also, over here on our secondary chart, I want to call this out as well, talking about a major relationship. And what I want to speak about is actually in reference to what Cosmic Whale sent me a while ago. So this chart right here is the PMAR, actually. I'll show you my settings just really quickly here, because I know I'm going to get a million fucking questions about this, and it's going to drive me crazy, but it's not a big deal, man. I understand. People just want to know, and I'm just I'm unreasonable sometimes in my in my response to that. Anyways, looking at this right here, I do wanted to note that this trend line on the bottom and this trend line on the top have been catching a lot of the major lows and a lot of the major highs on any test towards that. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've marked off these major regions. I'm actually going to get rid of the vertical bars. Are actually not all correct here. I did not prepare this beforehand, or at least I have it relevant for something else. But what I will do right now is prepare it exactly for this. So we can do that one right there. We'll move this one over for this one right here, of course. And then we don't need that one. And we do need this one, of course. And we do need this one right here. Actually, this one's going to be a little bit more like right around here. And you can see that based off of all of these not horizontal, but vertical bars, Bitcoin has been finding some pretty major lows along these regions. Even going back all the way to, of course, the flu dump, of which I'm dealing with that right now. Or maybe I'm dealing with that right now. Maybe actually I have the real flu. Anyways, who the fuck knows, man? Doesn't matter. My point is that this has been rather consistent, not necessarily for getting it to the T, but it has been close enough. And when you're looking at something like this and matching up with the other things, close enough is good enough, especially when you start to confirm from another few, various factors. So again, I'll just leave that right there. And then on top of that, we actually will notice over here on the daily MACD, the old MACD's nuts chart is showing not just histogram bullish divergence, of which we do have 1, 2, 3 drives coming off the last few lows. And this goes all the way back, by the way, to late November lows right here at 54,000 to our more recent ones in December, and then of course the most recent ones here in January. We are getting higher lows on wrong pane. We are getting higher lows on the MACD histogram, and by the way, we're about to see a cross the upside confirmed potentially at earliest tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time with any sort of a closure above $43,000. And by the way, I'm sure I'm going to get a question about this. It's just CT MACD. You just type in the one at the top left there. It's 100% free. You can find it in the good old TradingView library. And yes, if that does happen, I am looking for a move, very likely back up somewhere around the 20 simple, which we did, or earlier I did say short-term targets, over the next, I don't know, week, maybe it might be something like that, is probably going to be somewhere around there, between there and the 21, of which the 21 on the daily over here, exponential that is going to be a little bit lower, about 150 versus the 20 simple, which is about 45,500, and a little bit of price action above there is fine. Again, I do not call this correction over at fucking minimum until Bitcoin's back above like 49,500, but preferably I'd really say $52,000 can be like the no questions asked, for the long term. This looks damn good. Until then, yeah, short term very likely does continue here. Bitcoin has actually finally regained the 9 exponential moving average for the first time since your last like somewhat rally attempt back on over here in December 21st. We did see once it actually regained it, it did get a nice move up, actually all the way up to the top side Toronto bands right there. I don't think that's what's happening right here, but I do think a move towards the white 20 simple is rather likely on this, over this next week or two, let's say. On top of that, we did confirm several things over here on our stochastic momentum oscillator chart. We do see 2-day stochastic is going to be, did officially cross the upside and confirm yesterday upon closure, and that will be remaining with upside posturing as long as Bitcoin's closing above 41,350, which is, good. Daily is also going to be nice and vertical coming off the 40,650-ish region, which of course is building upon it below it on a shorter time frame relative to that, which is also of course good. 12-hour is definitely going to be there as well, I imagine. Indeed, it is fucking vertical above 40,750. That is also definitely good. And then the very short-term time frames like a 4-hour, 2-hour, and hourly are probably going to be a little more short-term corrective here, with the 4-hour turning down freshly, the bi-hourly turning down as well below 43,900, and hourly also having a bit of a reset, a little bit more of a healthy reset actually here at about 43,900. So very short-term time frames, now that we get into them, very likely are going to be trading a bit more sideways here, but sideways is good for the boo laws. What was the big bad area that we were looking for Bitcoin to take out yesterday that would actually, mean something for the medium-term time frames? That was right here, actually, right around 43,700 or so. Actually, no, it was right here, in fact, but still, nonetheless, Bitcoin did actually pull above it And whilst there is a potential for failure, obviously, as there always going to be, it's non-zero probability. I mean, we're just talking about statistics at the end of the day here. I would be putting the odds on the favor of continuation here, maybe after another short-term pullback. Definitely possible. If we go down here to an hourly, things are actually still looking rather constructive, to be quite fair. I mean, this is just going to be another drive of hidden bullish divergence plus a drive, or not a drive, but very low volatility. I typically like that for at least one more try to the upside around that wick high, which is 44,400 or so. Per speaking, I do think that Bitcoin is going to continue from that region for what it's worth. The only way that I call this a little bit of a short-term failure with a pullback first, and maybe even some nastiness up to like a 6 hour, as I do believe we have. Yeah, we would have hidden bearish divergence if Bitcoin were to top out here, thus confirming a local high, which we're going to talk about how to confirm that on the shortest term time frame first here. And actually, we even have it potential on the 12 hour as well. How would you actually confirm that? I think bare minimum earliest you could actually confirm that would be below $43,000 on an hourly closure. As long as Bitcoin's above there, I do look for this asset. All pullbacks should be higher lows. Short-term timeframes correct, while higher-term timeframes take over for the general trend, or not the general trend, but the general correction here. And then we get to play out our first, upside move after the big, bad, nasty red dildo party to the downside, right? So again, understand the order of operations. I really want to be hard-nosed with kind of what I'm saying, in the sense that I don't think that even if this is going to be the macro low, I don't think that Bitcoin's done here anytime soon. And while there probably is going to be a continuation of this rally, in fact, I'm looking for a continuation of this rally, like point blank period, over the next week and a half, to those critical numbers that we spoke about earlier. Until Bitcoin gets above one of those, the top end major regions, it's just not, this is just not a high quality play, at least the way that I look at things. I won't go over the hash ribbons indicator today because I think that we're already pretty deep into this video. But again, that would be another supporting factor that Bitcoin probably, or at least statistically speaking, is very likely to have put in lows, at least as, it could come a little bit lower, but the low would presumably be somewhere around $37,500 or $38,000. No less than that on a daily closing basis. As long as Bitcoin's kind of above there, that signal is still very much confirmed. I'll point you towards the weekend video where we spoke about the long-term analysis. Yeah, that's it. And then also I'll just bring up one of these damned things over here as well, and I'll just end on this. We briefly alluded to this one yesterday. I suppose it is relevant as well, and it does kind of round out the general picture here, especially playing into the idea that yes, this does have a lot of similarities, especially with what we saw over the summer, and also major bottoms as well. And that would of course be the on-chain metrics, which if I can find over here, there it fucking is, found it. Is going to be showing on the, no, it's not going to be showing shit. It's going to be showing on the adjusted dormancy flow indicator here that we are within an area that has, been some pretty major macro lows in the past. In fact, it's actually only been macro lows in the past. The last time that we saw it fired off was about $30,000. Of course, the time before that was a flu dump, actually at about, like $4,000 or $5,000. Time before that was 3,100, 2018, 2019 lows, cycle lows, by the way. The time before that was, of course, 2015 cycle lows. Time before that was your 2012 cycle lows as well. So all of those things kind of come into confluence with each other, and I do think that holds a little bit of weight. At the end of the day, though, I'm always very cautious when it comes to on-chain metrics, let's say, especially ones that I'm not going to finish that. This is not the day to finish that fucking sentence, I'll tell you that. So I'll just leave that right there. Ultimately, I do want to call this one out as well. The green 55, and I'll end on this. The green 55 on the weekly right here, that is really, really key for my long-term trend sort of analysis, specific to the weekly. And you see a very similar relationship here to what we saw again over the summer, where you actually even got a somewhat easy closure below the 55. No opens and closures, obviously, and of course, the most important thing still is actually closing below that first wick low right here, which we have not done specifically. Well, this is kind of a trappy situation where, you close ever so slightly below it, and then next week or the week after that, you bring it back above. That's going to start to look really, really good for really confirming a potential macro trap here. And until then, we should kind of play around with what this would likely look like. Do I have a fresh chart here? I guess I do, but I'm going to redraw it here just because why not? Basically, it's this, right? It's basically this. So we have our highs right there. We would have, presumably, if this does confirm as a low, we'd have our lows right here. Our lows are obviously coming in right around the 618 Fibonacci retracement. to actually do this properly, right there at about 40, just above 40,000 bucks. So that would be, traditionally speaking, a nice area to be aware of. So hopefully that was helpful. I think I'll leave it there on Bitcoin. I don't think that we did speak enough about invalidation conditions here, just because, I do think that it's obviously relevant. Again, $43,000 would be concerning on the short-term timeframes, even an hourly closure below there. I'd probably be looking for another test back down to about 42 after that on the very short-term timeframes. Again, though, I do not call this low like destroyed or invalidated, as long as you're closing daily dildos above the last wick low that we saw from, of course, that major dump dildo party that we saw in December 4th. So hopefully that was helpful. There you go for Bitcoin. And yeah, the rally probably continues from here over this next week and a half. Just keep those targets in mind and be wary. So there you go, sirs and